What was that?
Whoa! That's what I'm saying. Go, Chris, go!
You want to go deeper and deeper in.
Leave this place.
Whoa! Someone's just ran over there!
You've watched ghost videos before, but these are truly disturbing. One photo shows a shadow smiling from a rock no human could reach. Another clip, a cursed tree that's whispered a girl's name before she vanished. These aren't just urban legends, they happened, and they were caught on camera. This countdown walks you through 10 real encounters from the woods, each more disturbing than the last. And the final one might explain why some people feel watched, even when they're completely alone. It was just supposed to be a photo, nothing more, but what the Facebook user's mom captured at Devil's Den on June 14th, 2024 at 11:09 a.m. still has left people shaken. She had been walking up the road towards the infamous Witness Tree, a quiet place soaked in Civil War history. A guide stood nearby, talking to a guest about the Confederate sharpshooter who died right there. His body once found sprawled in front of a low stone wall between two giant rocks. But the horror wasn't in the history, it was in the photo. Zoom in, and just to the left of the rock, a dark figure. Not just a shadow, there's a shape, a face almost, and it's smiling. It's looking down at the woman in the photo. The next day, the Facebook user returned to find a logical answer. With help from another visitor, they tried to recreate the image, but the back of the rock, a sheer wall with nowhere to stand, nowhere to hide. The man had to stand far off on the road just to get a similar angle. The side-by-side shots told a story that science couldn't explain. So then who, or what, was smiling from the rock that morning? And more importantly, why was it looking right at them? Share your views in the comments below. It started with a scream, then splashes, like something massive was thrashing through the lake. Panic surged. Meanwhile, another scream tore through the tree. No one had any idea what to do or what was happening there. YouTuber Jasko and Chris weren't supposed to be there. This forest, isolated, wild, and whispered to be cursed, was known for luring people in and never letting them go, especially near that tree, because it was the cursed one. People said it was alive, not with roots and branches, but with something darker. Along the trail lay the remains of other lives, tattered bags, hats, and sun-bleached shirts like breadcrumbs from those who never returned. Even in daylight, something felt off. Voices echoed, faint and familiar without a source. Recordings caught words that no one remembered saying. One victim was said to have lost his mind, not just his way. Then came the objects, a rusted tin marked Climax 1800s, a broken porcelain doll's head, a voice from the EVP repeating, "Beverly's bleeding." And then, suddenly, they heard a gunshot. Everyone froze. Something or someone was out there. Closer to the tree, they found a purse. It looked just like the one tied to Taylor, the missing girl whose name had echoed through the spirit box earlier. But there was no vehicles nearby, no other hikers, but the feeling of being watched had grown unbearable. Suddenly, the truck alarm screamed. Motion sensors were triggered, but no animals, no breeze. How did the alarm blare? That night, tension buzzed like electricity. The spirit box spat out garbled horrors, pain tonight, ghost attack, and finally a name, Gary. Then came another gunshot. It was louder, closer. As they searched for its source, they found this. Tire tracks, and fresh ones at that. The group realized someone hadn't just followed them in, and after some time, a scream was heard from the lake. Hours earlier, the spirit box had named a car door side, matching exactly when the alarm had triggered. Too precise to dismiss. Now it said, satanic ritual, possessed, drown, then 11, a number, maybe a body count? Besides, a foul stench also rolled in, rot and decay. The lake stirred violently, and some kinds of shapes were seen. Those were not animals, but not humans either. Could it be paranormal? The spirit box said the killer is already among you. But Jasko and Chris already had enough. They packed up. Chris walked toward the cursed tree. Jasko took another breath, but when Jasko looked back, Chris was gone. What happened next changed everything. Chris later claimed that someone pulled up, slammed a car door, and fired a gun. He had to hide, taking shelter. From behind the trees, he even heard laughter, 3 voices speaking in a language that he didn't recognize. Terrified, he dropped his camera and fled. But when they returned, they saw knives were stuck in trees. A shattered bride and groom statue lay in the dirt. The spirit box went off again, with a whisper that chilled them to the bone. No doubt someone or something was still there, watching and hunting. What do you think? Tell us in the comments. October 2023. A group of friends were deep in the woods, doing a bonfire, laughter, nothing new. But halfway through, the original poster's boyfriend's best friend said that he felt dizzy. The 2 of them decided to rest inside her car while the others kept the music going. Inside the car, her boyfriend tried to cheer his friend up. They shot a few silly videos, laughing, joking, trying to keep things light. That night ended like all of the others. Pack up, head home, forget it. Until one day, her boyfriend's best friend sent him a snap memory from that night. He said, "Bro, look behind you in this one." And when they did, everything stopped. Right there in the reflection of the car window, a face. Not blurred, not vague, clear as day. Pale, female, staring directly at her boyfriend. But that was just the beginning. For weeks before the video resurfaced, he'd been talking about strange dreams. A demon, he said, came to him whispering nonsense that left him shaken. He started waking up with scratches on his back. 3 sharp lines, always 3, like claws. Point to be noted, they live in a known paranormal hotspot, but this wasn't anything like they'd seen before. It's in his head now. He was losing sleep. She could see it in his eyes. He's not the same. Because in that video, that ghostly face wasn't looking at the camera. It was only looking at him. But why? What did it do to him, you think? Tell us in the comments below. The forest was watching. That's how it felt when Josh and his team stood frozen beneath the thick canopy of Aokigahara, Japan's most haunted forest, surrounded by fog so dense it swallowed their flashlights whole. The equipment was failing one by one, batteries that were full now drained, devices flickering to black. Something was feeding off the power. They had followed a string, an old weathered cord tied between trees, perhaps once used by someone to find their way back, but it led to a hill and then stopped. And then came a sharp sound, a bang. No echo, no explanation. Moments later, a shirt appeared. It was torn and faded, possibly a woman's. A tag hung nearby. No one wanted to say it, but they all felt it. This wasn't left by the living. Earlier they heard whispers. One voice said, "I know you." Another said, "Dig here." A third replicated the chilling phrase, "I was wealthy." It was like peeling back layers of someone's former life, now dissolved into the forest. But when they asked about what had happened, one word returned again and again: strangled. As Josh, Steve, Don, and David moved deeper, the forest transformed. Trails they'd marked earlier were gone. The map was useless. The trees were too symmetrical, too tightly packed, as if the forest was growing around them. A carved X appeared on a trunk with yellow markings. None of it was familiar, despite Josh having visited before. They were trying to communicate. REM pods, cat balls, music boxes, all triggered in perfect sync when dark topics were mentioned. Spirits, jinn, curses. The answers came in pieces. "This is hell. I've been watching you. Leave this place. But also, I'm protecting you." A very strange duality. Was something guiding them deeper or warning them to turn back? And then it appeared. A small, human-like shadow, about 5 feet tall. It moved between the trees, never fully visible, but always just within reach of the camera's edge. The team tried to follow. Detectors spiked. Steve showed a triangle, like something trying to divide them. And then the red light flashed. It was a signal, but to follow or to flee? What do you think? What would you have done in this situation? Let us know in the comments below. She was alone, or so she thought. It was supposed to be just another peaceful hike, just her, the trees, the sky, and the winding path she knew like the back of her hand. One stretch of the trail even passed an ancient cave, so old that it had seen the Ice Age. Viking footsteps and Stone Age whispers echo off its walls. Nothing strange happened that day. And like always, she snapped a few photos and later shared them on Facebook with a caption as innocent as the walk itself. But then came the comments. Who's the person behind you? Were you hiking with someone? Confused, she zoomed in on the photo. She caught her breath. There was someone, a distant figure, barely visible, and it was standing there silently watching. And yet, she had been completely alone. She stared at the image for hours, trying to rationalize it. Maybe a hiker that she hadn't noticed, a trick of the light, a shadow cast that was just right, but nothing fit. She was definitely spooked, and that means something coming from a woman who didn't believe in ghosts, let alone dabble in anything supernatural. She wouldn't even know how to fake a photo if she wanted to. This wasn't a prank, it wasn't a filter. Her family showed the photo around, and no one could explain it. And in the second image, it's even clearer. Years have passed, but Reddit user Wehovis Jitness says the image haunts him still, because if she were alone, then who or what was standing behind her? What do you think this is? Share your thoughts in the comments below. For Grizzly Gaz, it was supposed to be just another adventure, but when the flashlight began to flicker and the Bible lay upside down on a crumbling slab in the woods, Gaz realized this was no ordinary exploration. He had heard the stories, whispers of a place hidden deep in the woods near Ryburn Reservoir. Locals called it the Druid's Altar, but no one could agree on what it really was. Was it a forgotten pagan shrine, a site for dark rituals, or just chunks of concrete rotting in the undergrowth? Gaz needed to see it with his own eyes. He arrived late in the day, just as the last hikers vanished behind the trees. Beside Gaz, Fendi, his loyal dog, wagged her tail, unaware of the strange path that they were about to take. They waited for the crowds to clear, watching the sunlight slip between the trees, and then Gaz headed into the deeper brush, off trail where things felt untouched. That's when he found it, an abandoned campsite nearly swallowed by the undergrowth. It looked like a party that had gone wrong. Ripped tent, trash everywhere, and a single can of soup slowly rusting into the earth. But it wasn't just a mess. It was the silence, the broken bong, the heavy branch overhead that had fallen right where he'd heard something moving earlier. The forest suddenly didn't feel empty. Still, Gaz pushed on. He wasn't here for guesses. Hidden in his pack was a self-camping tent, dyed green to blend in with the woods. As dusk turned to darkness, he boiled water on his portable stove, trying to stay warm. But the forest had other plans. Twigs snapped, leaves rustled, because something was moving, always just out of sight. Eventually, his flashlight led him to a clearing, and at the center, raised from the ground, sat from what he came to find. The so-called altar. It wasn't ancient stone, just concrete, mossy, and cracked. Likely leftovers from a forgotten structure. But sitting right on top was a single object, an old Bible. It was placed upside down. When he opened it, the first page stared back at him. Genesis. Names were scribbled in faint ink. Marianne Eastwood, Taunton, 1995. He stood frozen. Someone had been here. Someone had brought it. And for the reason that it didn't feel random. He didn't feel watched, but he didn't feel alone either. As he hiked back, the torch was dead, and Gaz knew that this wasn't just a story anymore. But why was there an upside-down Bible? Who placed it there? Share your opinion in the comments. They only meant to catch the sunset, but what they captured instead still haunts them to this day. On the second evening of their Gettysburg trip, a Facebook user and his fiancée decided to drive out to the Eternal Light Peace Memorial. It was getting dark fast, the sun had just dipped below the horizon, the lot was nearly empty, and a police cruiser was doing its final sweep. That's when the user hopped out of the intersection with their camera and started snapping photos. Wide shots of the tower, the fields, and the stretch of road that was leading up to it. No one else seemed to notice anything strange. But back home, days later, things began to shift. As the user began reviewing their photos, particularly the ones from that evening, they started noticing details that they hadn't seen before. Their camera had been pushed to its limits in low light, using high ISO to brighten the shadows, which introduced heavy grain, almost like a static on an old TV. Still, they tried enhancing the images as carefully as they could. That's when the discoveries began. In 3 key locations, the rear of the tower, the observation platform, and the open field ahead, some photos seemed to change frame by frame. Shadows moved, shapes shifted, and in some, there were figures faint, human-like forms in places where no one should have been. Some of the images were just quick phone snaps of the original still on a monitor, yet the anomalies remained visible. The user tried to rule out the obvious, white flowers, thick vegetation, and camera noise, but a few frames resisted explanation. There was motion. There was a presence. A second trip is already being planned for fall. This time they'll arrive in the dark, intentionally. But what did the camera see that their eyes didn't get that night? What kind of presence did they catch in the camera? Let us know in the comments. It looked like nothing at first, just a dark, grainy photo from a misty graveyard, but when he zoomed in, his heart nearly stopped. Staring back from the shadows was a figure, tall, still, and cloaked in what looked like ancient robes. But the face, it wasn't a face at all. It was hollow, sunken, and bone white. A skull where no living face should be. That photo was taken by a local man from Weston-super-Mare, a quiet coastal town in southwest England. On a windy midnight in November 2007, he wandered onto the church graveyard in Uphill, a centuries-old village steeped in Roman history and ghost tales passed down like warnings. Armed with just a 3.2 megapixel phone camera and a curiosity for the supernatural, he climbed the hill into the swirling mist. He waited until he was safely back home before looking through the pictures. The last thing he wanted to do was spook himself and flee too early. But nothing could have prepared him for what he saw. A ghostly monk, and that face. But here's the part that still haunts him. What he saw in the second photo shouldn't have been there. What do you think that he saw that day? Tell us in the comments below. Reddit user newspaperentire7958 didn't expect anything strange that night. He was just in his bathroom, window cracked open, when it hit him, a roar. Distant but powerful, like a stadium full of people erupting into cheers. Only there was no people, no stadium. Just dark woods and mountains surrounding his tiny Austrian village. He lives far from the noise of cities. The nearest town is kilometers away. And yet what he heard sounded like a football match in full swing, shouting, chanting, the kind of chaos that should be surrounded by bright lights and thousands of seats. But it came from the forest. He'd always felt something off about those woods. He'd never been able to explain it, but just a gut feeling that he shouldn't be there. A few days later, the sound returned, and this time he grabbed his phone and went in. The moment he stepped beneath the trees, the cheering stopped. Silence. And then, finally, 3 ghost-like sounds crept through the trees. He caught them on video. It's subtle, but chilling. He hasn't gone back since, but the forest hasn't made its last move just yet. What was really hiding in those trees, and why does it sound like a stadium? Was it calling him in? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Bear knew that something was wrong the moment the scream cut through the trees. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't the wind, it was human, and it came from somewhere just behind him. The popular YouTuber behind Exploring with Bear had returned to the infamous Murder Road, armed with insider information from a law enforcement source. His goal was to document the exact site where the first 2 bodies were found, an unsolved mob dumping ground shrouded in decades of silence. But the daylight faded quicker than it should have. As Bear stepped deeper into the overgrown trail, every part of the forest began to change. Metal banged in the distance. Not a gunshot, but something just as threatening. Somewhere behind the trees, someone or something was moving. Murder Road had always been more than a rumor. Mob meetings, unreported crimes, fires that no one responded to, bodies that were never identified. Bear was told that local firefighters refused to enter without sheriff's protection. He passed trees marked with reflective paint, potential grave sites from older investigations, and then an old oil well, long abandoned but rumored to be a second burial zone. That's when it started. The weight. Not emotional, but physical. Like the forest was draped in something unseen, pressing down. Twigs cracked beneath him. A shadow shifted. A man stood silently just beyond his reach. No flashlight, no words, just watching him. The spirit box began spitting fragments like a broken memory loop. I was hung, took my last breath here, fatal, and then the name, I am Cain. Bear could feel the presence, multiple now, circling from the dark. Too quiet to be animals, too patient to be people. Then came the scream. He ran, but something ran with him. You might want to uncover who Kane is, what the spirit box actually said, or how Bear escaped Murder Road. Any guesses? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And for more thrills, watch this next video.